morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Richard Wells. I'm Director of the Center of Research Expertise for the Prevention of Musculoskeletal Disorders. And I'd like to welcome you on behalf of myself and my co-chair for this conference, Andrew Laing, who will be talking to you in just a moment. I'd like to also acknowledge that the Center for Research Expertise is funded by the Ministry of Labour of Ontario, so we're grateful to them. CRE-MSD is a network of researchers dedicated to the prevention of musculoskeletal disorders, either by generating new knowledge or finding and transferring the best current knowledge. And so this conference is part of their mandate. So we're here today. I think we've got a great agenda and a great bunch of people in the room to look at two important issues. The first one being musculoskeletal disorders, which, as you know, are a large contributor to the burden of illness and costs in Ontario workplaces, but also the aging workforce. And so putting those two together, we're interested in looking at how can we prevent musculoskeletal disorders in the whole population, but also today to have a look at whether there are different things to consider in the older workforce, and if so, how can we best have them work longer and healthier. Just a couple of announcements. The fire exits are behind you, and there are exit doors into the parking lot. And perhaps even more importantly, the washrooms. You come out of the doors at the back, you go left and left again, and the washrooms are on your right just before you come into the hotel. There is Wi-Fi, and there will be a password coming round for you very shortly. With that, I'd like to get out of the way and introduce my co-chair, Professor Andrew Laing from the University of Waterloo, who's going to introduce the topic in a little more depth than I have. So thank you.
It's taken me years to be comfortable in telling this. I'm not normal. My brain is hardwired differently than most people. And I've traced it back, and there's one factor that really is responsible for this. My father was a health and safety consultant. And so now I'm comfortable because I'm amongst my peers. Folks like you have a passion, or at least an interest in the prevention of injuries or health and safety within the workplace. But I didn't have a normal upbringing. The dinner table at my house, I was not asked, "How was your day, son?" My father would open his briefcase and pull out contraband Polaroid pictures of unsafe practices or near misses at the workplaces that he'd visited that day. And there was a test at the end of every meal as to which things were contravened. I was probably the first kid in Ontario who learned how to spell Wemyss before I could spell my own name. This is a test now for you guys. How do you spell it? It was the silent H that always got me. In my house, the Bible wasn't the good book. The Quran wasn't the good book. When somebody made reference to the good book, they were talking about this book. I filed my first work refusal, winter of 1985. I told my dad that the driveway was too slippery and snowy. It was unsafe to take the trash out. My dad came out, looked at me, looked at the driveway, said, I'm proud of you, son. He went to the garage, came back, handed me a shovel, said, take out the trash after you shovel the driveway. My dad was a trainer for forklift driving. And he was hired by a company to advise them on the next forklift that they were buying for their workplace. So he went to the dealership and he looked at the newest model. He said to the dealer, you know what, I'm not really impressed with this newest model. The interface really isn't all that intuitive, I don't think. And The dealer said, you know, that's not true at all. A 10-year-old could drive this thing. Well, my dad was never one to back down from a challenge. He said, I'll take that bet. He drove to my public school, pulled me at a Mr. St. John's grade 5 spelling test, brought me back to the dealership, and in the loading dock, I proved that a 10-year-old could not safely drive a forklift. My dad was so proud of me, he took me out for ice cream, and it was a confusing childhood that I had. But amongst all of the weird and wacky things that my dad did tell me, there's one thing that he said that's driven my research career to this day, and it's that when my generation starts to get old and starts to retire, it's going to have huge implications for the workforce. And now my dad was born in 1942. He retired 2 years ago at the age of 70, and that wave is upon us now. People are retiring, the workforce is aging, and it's surprising how little we really know about the implications of an aging workforce for not only health and safety, but for productivity issues. So I'm ecstatic and excited today to be with you to really discuss the best available evidence and potential approaches for preventing specifically work-related musculoskeletal injuries within the workplace.